Signs you're transitioning from light to dark, chosen, must watch. Most people think being chosen means being elevated, being gifted, being blessed with light. And that's true for a while. But what they don't tell you is that the path of the chosen doesn't end in light. The real ones, the ones who are truly marked by something ancient, something cosmic, something almost terrifying in its depth, they go beyond the light. They step into something far more powerful, far more raw, far more real. They enter the realm of the dark chosen. And if you're watching this now, if these words are reaching into your chest and stirring something you've never fully admitted to yourself, then maybe you're already transitioning. This transition isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with fanfare or applause. It begins in silence, in aching, in isolation. It starts when the light that once guided you becomes too soft, too hollow, too fragile to hold the weight of what you're becoming. You begin to notice that the spiritual paths that once inspired you now feel limiting. The affirmations, the rituals, the love and light philosophies, they don't satisfy you anymore. Not because they're wrong, but because they're incomplete. You start craving something deeper, something ancient, something that doesn't just soothe your wounds but names them, honors them, extracts power from them. That's the first sign your soul stops seeking comfort and starts demanding truth.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
At first, it feels like you're slipping, like you're falling out of grace. You question yourself. You wonder if you're going backward spiritually. But what's really happening is that your soul is breaking through the membrane of illusion. You're no longer satisfied with superficial healing. You're no longer content with bypassing your pain in the name of positivity. You start to realize that every shadow you've been told to avoid is actually a doorway, a code, a map to your real essence. And suddenly the darkness doesn't feel like something to escape, it feels like something to explore. Have you felt that shift? That subtle but undeniable pull towards silence, solitude, inwardness? Have you noticed how your tolerance for inauthenticity has vanished? How you can't be in certain rooms anymore, can't entertain certain conversations, can't pretend to laugh at things that don't align with your truth? That's not depression. That's not antisocial behavior. That's not you being too sensitive. That's your frequency changing. Your soul is mutating into a deeper version of itself, and no one warned you how lonely that would feel. You start walking away not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. You begin shedding layers of yourself that were never truly yours. The mask of spiritual perfection, the need to be seen as enlightened, the desire to be accepted by the very world you came here to disrupt. And this is where it gets intense, because the moment you stop playing the lightworker role, people start turning on you. Friends, family, even spiritual communities. They look at you like you've lost your way, when in truth, you found it. Because you're not here to float above the world. You're here to root into it, to reclaim it, to transform it from the inside out. That's the second sign. You stop craving ascension and start embodying incarnation. You no longer want to escape the human experience. You want to master it. You want to get your hands dirty with the realness of life. You want to walk through grief, rage, lust, power, death, not as sins to be cleansed, but as energies to be understood. You realize that the spiritual journey isn't about rising above the shadow. It's about integrating it, embracing it, becoming whole. This is where your intuition sharpens. You begin sensing the truth behind people's words, feeling the energy behind their eyes. You can no longer be fooled by surface-level kindness or empty spiritual jargon. You start reading vibrations like ancient texts. Your body becomes a sensor. Your dreams become messages. Your silence becomes sacred. You don't talk as much because you don't need to. Your presence becomes heavy, magnetic, undeniable. That's the third sign. Your energy no longer seeks attention, it commands respect. But this transition also awakens something darker inside of you, something primal, something untamed. You begin to feel a fire that no meditation ever prepared you for. A rage that isn't violent but sacred. A hunger that isn't egoic but divine. You're not becoming evil. You're becoming complete. You're reclaiming the parts of yourself that were exiled by a spiritual system that feared its own shadow. And now, you're not just healing, you're transforming. You're not just aligning, you're activating. You begin to feel like you're carrying a storm inside of you, but not a storm of destruction, a storm of liberation. Let me ask you something real, something raw. Have you ever felt like you were too much for this world? Too intense, too deep, too knowing? Have you ever sensed that your pain wasn't random, that your suffering wasn't punishment, but preparation? What if I told you that everything you've endured was designed to crack you open, to strip you of illusion, to initiate you into your true role? What if this darkness you're walking through isn't your demise, it's your destiny? Because here's the truth, light-chosen ones inspire, but dark-chosen ones transform. Light-chosen ones guide, but dark-chosen ones disrupt. Light-chosen ones awaken people, but dark-chosen ones shatter illusions. And if you're in this transition right now, you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. You're not losing your way, you're losing everything that was never really yours to begin with. The sacred rebellion, why you had to be broken to become sovereign. There's a rebellion unfolding inside you, and it's not loud, not chaotic, not the kind of rebellion that screams for attention. It's sacred, it's silent, it's sovereign. It begins when you finally realize that your breaking wasn't a tragedy, it was an activation. The moments when you thought you were being destroyed were actually moments of divine disassembly. You weren't falling apart. You were being restructured from the inside out. Piece by piece, illusion by illusion, your soul was stripping away everything that was never truly yours. And yes, it hurt, it burned, but it was never meant to kill you, it was meant to free you. Most people don't understand what it means to become sovereign. They think independence is sovereignty. They think rebellion is anger. But true sovereignty isn't about cutting the world off. It's about returning to yourself so deeply that nothing external owns you anymore. No system, no label, no belief, no trauma. You stop reacting to life and begin commanding it not from ego, but from essence. Before, you were trying to fix yourself to fit in. Now, you're remembering you were never meant to fit into a world built on forgetting. That's why you had to be broken. That's why the old version of you had to die. You see, the transition from light to dark chosen isn't just about energy, it's about identity collapse. It forces you to question everything, your purpose, your past, your pain. You look at your old self and barely recognize them. You feel the dying off of parts you clung to for safety, your need to be liked, your addiction to validation, your fear of being misunderstood. And it's terrifying. Because if you're not that person anymore, who are you? That's the question that drives you into the void, into the quiet, into the unknown. But here's the secret. The void isn't empty. It's sacred space. It's the womb of your rebirth. It's where you stop performing and start listening. Listening to your own voice beneath the noise. Listening to the ancient codes buried in your bones. Listening to the version of you that never needed saving, only remembering. And in that listening, a new power begins to rise. A power that doesn't need to announce itself. A power that doesn't ask for permission. A power that has nothing to prove because it is. This is the sacred rebellion. It's not about fighting the world. It's about no longer fighting yourself. It's about reclaiming the authority you gave away to survive. It's about walking away from the cages you once called home. It's about realizing that your pain was never weakness, it was currency. It bought you depth. It bought you vision. It bought you access to realms most people will never touch. Because while others were busy chasing light, you were being initiated into truth. And truth isn't always pretty. Sometimes it burns everything down. Sometimes it isolates you. Sometimes it leaves you with nothing but your breath and your knowing. But that's the point. Because when you've lost everything false, you finally discover what's real. You, your soul, your sovereignty, your storm. And suddenly you realize you don't need to be saved. You never did. You just needed to remember that you were the fire all along. Let me ask you something that could change the way you see your entire life. What if every betrayal, every loss, every breakdown was a divine setup to bring you back to your throne? What if none of it was punishment but preparation? Can you feel that? Can you sense the truth in that, even if it scares you? Because here's the thing, chosen ones don't get to skip the fire. We are forged through it. And the deeper your pain, the higher your calling. The darker your journey, the brighter your impact. You weren't meant to play it safe. You weren't meant to be palatable. You weren't meant to stay in the light. You were meant to embody the whole spectrum, to walk into the shadows and come out with codes, to bleed wisdom, to speak truths that make people uncomfortable and then awake. That's the power of the dark chosen. We don't seek approval. We seek alignment. We don't offer comfort. We offer clarity. We don't play roles. We rewrite them. And we're not here to be understood. We're here to remember and remind. The sacred rebellion is the surrender to your own becoming. It's the moment you stop trying to escape your darkness and start building your throne inside it. So yes, you had to be broken. You had to lose the version of you that was built for survival. Because now you're being sculpted for sovereignty. You're learning how to hold power without needing control, how to lead without needing to be followed, how to walk alone without feeling lost. That's the sign that you're no longer a seeker, you've become a source. And soon you'll look back on everything that tried to destroy you, and you'll smile, not because it was easy, but because it brought you home. Walking between worlds, how dark chosen ones navigate reality differently. You know you've changed when the world starts to feel like an echo rather than a home. It's not that you're detached or disassociated, it's that something inside you has awakened to a deeper rhythm, a more ancient pulse, a reality beneath the reality. This is the experience of walking between worlds. When you transition from being light chosen to dark chosen, you begin to see through the veils that once blinded you. You begin to operate on a frequency that moves parallel to this world, but not within its rules. You're still here, but you're not of here anymore. And that shift changes everything. At first, it feels like you're losing your mind. You can't explain what you're sensing. You can't articulate why you feel things others don't. You start seeing patterns, connections, alignments that others miss. You wake up in the middle of the night not from nightmares, but because your spirit is receiving downloads. You walk through the grocery store and feel the collective grief of strangers. You hear lies behind smiles. You see intentions behind words. You feel time folding in on itself. This is not imagination. This is not paranoia. This is the gift of the dark chosen perception beyond illusion. You're not just seeing more. You're sensing more. Your intuition becomes a compass that doesn't always make sense to the logical mind. You'll be guided to places, people, and moments that seem random, but later reveal themselves as portals. You'll leave relationships that made sense on paper, but crushed your spirit. You'll turn down opportunities that once excited you because your soul whispered, not aligned. And you won't always be able to explain your choices. You'll just know. This knowing is not something you learn. It's something you remember. And that's when you realize you're no longer operating from programming. You're operating from presence. But walking between worlds is not just about spiritual sight. It's about spiritual responsibility. Because once you can see the game, you can't pretend you don't. Once you've tasted truth, you can't go back to the surface. You begin to feel the weight of your words, the impact of your energy, the consequences of your choices in a way that others don't. You become aware of timelines. You realize that one small choice can shift your entire trajectory. You begin to live with intention, with precision, with presence. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you understand your power now. You understand that you're not just navigating reality, you're shaping it. And here's the beauty of this new awareness: you stop reacting. You stop spiraling. You stop begging life to be different. Instead, you become a creator within the chaos. You learn how to hold duality. You learn how to feel grief and gratitude in the same breath. You learn how to be calm in the storm without becoming numb. This is the paradox of the dark chosen. You are both grounded and galactic, both human and divine, both soft and unshakable. And because of that, you become a bridge between the seen and unseen, the broken and the whole, the illusion and the truth. Let me ask you something that most people never dare to consider. What if the pain you've carried wasn't a burden, but a blueprint? What if your sensitivity wasn't a flaw, but a frequency detector? What if the reason you feel like you don't belong is because you were never meant to belong to a system built on forgetting? Dark chosen ones don't fit into structures. We dismantle them, not with violence but with vibration. We walk into rooms and the energy shifts, not because we demand attention, but because our presence carries codes most people don't even have language for. We are here to remember and to remind. And that means we must master the art of walking between worlds, the world of matter and the world of meaning, the world of the physical and the world of the energetic, the world of form and the world of frequency. This path also requires discernment. Not everything that's spiritual is sacred. Not every light is pure. Not every teacher is aligned. As a dark chosen one, your discernment becomes your shield. Your inner compass becomes your guide. You learn to trust your body, your gut, your dreams, your silence. Because the more you walk between worlds, the more you realize how much illusion is disguised as truth. And you're not here to be fooled, you're here to see clearly, even when it hurts. People will feel the difference in you. They might say you've changed, that you're colder, more distant. But the truth is, you've become clearer. You've stopped pouring energy into every cup. You've stopped performing for love. You've stopped explaining your worth. Instead, you've started remembering that your energy is a sacred currency, and not everyone deserves access to it. And yet, even with this clarity, you will feel compassion, not the fluffy kind, but the fierce kind. Because you remember what it was like to be asleep. You remember what it felt like to beg for crumbs of validation. You remember what it felt like to lose yourself just to be seen. And because of that, you hold space not to save, but to mirror. You don't rescue people. You remind them of their own power. That's what walking between worlds teaches you. That salvation isn't something you give to others. It's something you ignite within them. You'll get used to the silence. You'll make peace with the solitude. You'll stop craving to be understood by everyone. And in that quiet, you'll hear the voice of your own soul louder than ever. You'll realize that you don't walk this path for applause. You walk it because there's no other way to be true to who you really are. The final rite, becoming the vessel for power that cannot be contained. There comes a moment in the transition from light to dark chosen where the journey no longer feels like a path you're walking, it feels like a force that's moving through you. It's no longer about learning, fixing, healing, or growing. It's about embodying, becoming, allowing what has always been within you to finally take over. This is the final rite, not marked by ceremony, but by surrender. Not by external validation, but by the quiet, irreversible knowing that you are no longer who you were and you never want to be again. You've gone through the pain. You've walked through the shadow. You've released the illusions. And now, there's only one thing left to do: hold the power. And this is where most fall. Because holding true power means becoming the vessel, not a controller, not a performer, not a manipulator. A vessel. And that requires absolute integrity with self. You can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't hide behind roles, masks, or spiritual identities. You must be willing to stand naked energetically, emotionally, and spiritually. Because this kind of power will not flow through anything false. You begin to realize that your body is not just a body, it's a temple. Your words are not just words, they are spells. Your thoughts are not just thoughts, they are commands. You are no longer merely participating in life, you are generating reality. And that's why this stage is sacred. Because power without embodiment is dangerous. But power through surrender, that's transformation. That's alchemy. That's when you become a living portal for truth. You no longer fear being too much. You no longer shrink to protect others' comfort. You no longer dim your vision to match the smallness around you. Because you've seen what happens when you deny your power. It poisons you. It depresses you. It distorts you. And now you're done with that. You've tasted what it feels like to live in full alignment, and you'll never go back. This is what it means to become a vessel for power that cannot be contained. It's not about being more forceful. It's about being more real. And this power, it doesn't roar. It doesn't explode. It radiates. It moves through you in every step, every breath, every gaze. People can't explain it, but they feel it. They respect you without knowing why. They listen even before you speak. Because you've become something rare, someone who is fully integrated. Someone who has gone to the depths, faced the shadows, burned in the fire, and emerged not just wiser but recalibrated. Let me ask you this, and answer it with your soul. Can you trust yourself to hold this power without needing to prove it? Can you be so aligned that your presence speaks louder than your efforts? Because if you can, then you've made it. Not in the way the world defines success, but in the way your soul defines it. You've become what you were always meant to be. Not a seeker, not a follower, not even a teacher, but a living embodiment of truth, a transmitter of fierce love, a guardian of sacred codes, a storm in stillness, a fire in human skin. This is the final rite, the becoming, the remembering, the embodiment. You are not just a chosen one. You are the dark chosen, and your time has come.